The night above Sanctis Ferrum tears open like metal under a hot blade. Sirens harmonize with church bells. Vox towers clip into static as every channel shouts the same word, unknown. The rupture isn't a wound, so much as a doorway remembering how to be closed. Light drips from it. A silhouette drifts out, small against the seam, white and purple like porcelain over steel. Unarmored in a sky that chews ships for scrap, Manufactoria roofmen stop mid-chant. Pilgrims press their foreheads to soot and draw the double-headed bird. Auto Cathedra floodlights find the intruder and paint him in sanctified glare. He floats without thrusters, arms loosely folded, tail curving behind like a punctuation mark in a decree already signed. The void seam knits shut. Heat lightning ripples the cloud deck, and the stranger descends through the smoke. A forge spire trembles. Its upper stacks groan and fold as an orc cruiser, how did none of them see it, falls out of the clouds on fire, a continent of scrap and teeth. The cruiser is breaking up. A cathedral quarter sits square beneath its shadow. The stranger raises a hand. Air hardens. The orc ship hits something that isn't there and stops, screaming. Glowing filigree webbing, invisible until stress reveals it, wraps the dying ship like a net, then peels it. Plates roll off in molten orange curls and drop harmless into the storm. Turrets pop from their cradles and tumble like coins. A reactor tumbles free, a core, cyclopean, spinning. The stranger flicks his finger. A needle of violet punctures the reactor's heart. The detonation comes, bright and tidy, 50 kilometers high, shaped upward so it eats its own throat. Debris drifts as ash. The stranger lowers his hand. On the Hab Street below, a widow drops her votive and whispers a thank you she doesn't know how to aim. Inside the Hive Basilica's command sanctum, brass cherubs wheel over a hololithic table. The Admiral leans in with the posture of a man who's decided already. Tall, scarred, hair gone to iron filings. Lord Admiral Vesper Cade of Battlefleet Ferrum watches the playback, stops it on the finger flick, the reactor's death flower, and breathes out through his nose. Beside him, the Inquisitor does not breathe at all. Inquisitor Malia Thorne wears black like a verdict. The rosette at her throat is a knife. Her eyes are submerged coals. A silent sister stands at her shoulder, cowl down, face a calm blade. Sister Lix, whose presence is like the absence of music. Xenos, the Inquisitor murmurs. Savior, the Admiral says. Threat, she answers. On the hololith, the stranger pivots to inspect the city. Then he turns his face, his strange, sleek, amused face, toward a cathedral spire whose roof has cracked, and he moves. Faster than a bullet but slow enough for human comprehension, he crosses a kilometer and stops above the spire, palm out. Stone stops falling. In the nave, 1,000 worshippers gasp as the cracked roof hangs suspended like a decision. Dust sparkling in the candlelight. The stranger's tail points. The roof lowers to its own walls, every shard kissing back home. Mortar hisses where no mortar is. Rain patters on restored stone. The Admiral glances toward the Vox pits. Patch me to the city wide. In progress, Lord Admiral, a tech adept answers, hands a blur of mechadendrites. The stranger hears anyway. He turns his head as though listening to something only he can hear, and smiles without teeth. He drops to a balcony, half a meter of exploration at a time, because he wants the people to see him, to read his body like a glyph. He lands lightly among statues of saints and skulls. Vox servitors turn ugly faces toward him, lenses irising wide. A choir boy flinches. A pilgrim falls prostrate and stays there, counting beads. I am Emperor Frieza, the stranger says, voice clear in every ear without a speaker. This world is mine now. The silence that follows isn't silence. It's gasps, muffled prayer, a metal groan, the clatter of dropped censer. The Admiral's jaw flexes. The Inquisitor's lip curls. In the air above, orc drop pods puncture cloud and flame into the lower bays, howling. Anti-air lances fire late. Vox snarls bloom. Boarding calls, traffic control dying, fire orders confused. The stranger looks up as if inspecting gnats. He vanishes. He reappears in front of a drop pod, one hand outstretched. The pod crumples like paper. Orcs inside smear green across steel, and then there is nothing to wipe up. He does it again and again. The action teeth-quick, spatially logical, brutal. He ignores the pods falling toward Manufactoria. He deletes every pod aimed at hospitals, at schools, at pilgrim routes, at waterworks. A flick for each. A needle beam for those too close to ground. An elegant arc for the one about to flatten a convoy of evac buses. The buses keep going, tires smoking, drivers weeping. Later they will say they saw an angel with a devil's grin. The Admiral watches this with military arithmetic. He's reading our infrastructure, he says softly. Protecting high-value civilian assets. Not ours. His. The Inquisitor nods once, grimly conceding the point. Control begins with gratitude. The Orc cruiser's coffin seed was a spear tip for a wah that had shadowed the warp route into Ferrum space. Now the shadow emerges. Crude ships slouch into real space, wakes shedding demons like molting skin. Their captains brawl on their own bridges. Their crews cheer. Above the city, the stranger, Frieza, turns his palm up. A sphere of light forms over it, small, deceptively small. The air around it vaporizes. Rain hisses into steam. The sphere grows. Below, in the command sanctum, candles gutter. "Sir," a Vox officer says to the Admiral, voice rattling. He's forming a... "Don't finish the sentence," the Inquisitor says, quick and sharp. "If you know the word for it, you've already spoken heresy." The sphere grows and remains terribly neat. When Frieza throws it, he does not throw it at the fleet. He throws it up and out. And when it blossoms, it does it above the highest of the incoming ships. A bloom of gravity and heat. The detonation reaches down with polite fingers and plucks the teeth out of the oncoming wave. Orc ships wobble, flinch their own decks. Gretchen go pinwheeling through corridors like confetti. The bomb eats itself mostly in vacuum. The city feels no more than a wind. Silence again. Then cheering, ragged and unbelieving. Children throw their arms up. Somewhere, a preacher rewords a sermon mid-syllable. Frieza lowers his hand and smiles. He hears the cheering, and it pleases him like a blade pleasing its owner. In the sanctum, a Vox chime. Governor Heliamara begs audience, a clerk announces. "Let her in," the Admiral says. The governor arrives breathless and powdered with ash. Dairy white hair pinned tight, eyes red with smoke. She takes one look at the hololith and one at the Inquisitor and decides which fight she can win. "Praise the Emperor," she says. And then, until we know otherwise, we owe that creature our lives. The Inquisitor's smile is surgical. "And what currency will you pay him with, Governor?" "Time," the governor says. "While my people will live to have it." Frieza reappears on the balcony. He steps through rose smoke and incense curls as though they're bowing to him. Guards aim laser rifles. He ignores the barrels and looks past them to the nave below. His fingers drum on nothing. "This city kneels with admirable speed," he says. "I appreciate efficiency." The Admiral steps forward on the balcony. Not to him, but with enough proximity to be read as proximate. "We appreciate precision." He keeps his voice flat. "Your name is Frieza. I am Lord Admiral Vesper Cade. You have my thanks for preventing mass casualty. And my questions," the Inquisitor says, taking half a step. "How did you intercept a planetary-scale infall? What are your terms? Who do you serve?" Frieza looks at her with bright, disinterested eyes. "I serve myself. You may serve me or not. Your terms are simple. Obedience. Your reward, survival. It is a generous bargain. I can make it less so, if you prefer." Sister Lix's blank field licks at Frieza like cold. He turns his head slightly and tastes the absence, the quiet in the air around her that devours murmurs. He frowns, curious. He is not a psyker. He knows his own body like a jailer knows keys. The silence still pricks. Interesting, he says. You carry a hole. Null, the Inquisitor says. A kindness against the wrong kind of attention. Something older than strategy stirs in the warp. The orc fleet dies unceremoniously. The storm that delivered it thins. Through the thinning comes chanting. Too synchronized for orcs, too disciplined for pirates, too hungry to be human. The hololith flickers as signals knot themselves into hexagrams. Liturgies bleed into machine song. An overlay writes itself on the sky, 8-pointed, patient, full of grammar. The Admiral sets his teeth. Word-bearers, he says. Our city has not paid for its rescue yet, the Inquisitor says. They'll exact tithe in souls. Let them come, Frieza says. And there is hunger in the amusement now. He floats into the nave, downward, beautifully in control. Choir boys back away. The Cardinal of the Basilica rises trembling from a prayer dais. When Frieza passes him, the man's rosary beads snap from his fingers and hang in the air for a second before dropping at the stranger's bare feet. Do not be afraid, Frieza tells him, because he likes the joke. In the transept, a fissure opens. Neat as a knife slit. Words spill out, actual words. Black and slick, letters made meat. A man in red armor steps through them, wearing scripture like skin, his mouth split with joyous mania. He is tall as a statue and speaks with a radio in his throat. Behold, the Dark Apostle cries, a new god of dominion. He speaks to the city and to Frieza at once. We have studied you, bright exile. Your will is a knife. Your mercy is a coin you spend to buy obedience. Come, let us sponsor your apotheosis. Frieza looks down at the kneeling city like a man appraising a painting he already owns. He glances once at the Dark Apostle, not as at an equal, but as at an entertainer who arrives 2 minutes late. You're loud, Frieza says. The Apostle's demon blade whispers in a language that bruises the ear. He lifts his left hand. A gauntlet encases it, faceted black. Every facet a dead star. The Inquisitor hisses through her teeth. Blackstone, she says. He carries Catan warding in a heretic's glove. Emperor, save us. Frieza blinks. The gauntlet fills the world like the sister's silence. But wrong. Less absence and more refusal. He has never felt anything like it. He smiles again. Sharper. Better. Word-bearers spill out of the slit like ink. The nave fills with red. Servo skulls dart panicked. The Inquisitor points. Stormtroopers open up, disciplined bolts bright as beads on a string. Marines in their heretic plate walk through the storm as if through weather. The Admiral barks orders. Cannon servitors pivot. Frieza glides, one finger extended. The death beam is a thought. Orc heads would have popped like grapes. Here, the first heretic he touches deflates neatly through the heart. The Dark Apostle grins and steps across symbols painted with blood that isn't blood. His demon blade meets Frieza's forearm with a kiss and bites through the energy skin he wears like invisible armor. Frieza feels the first true pain he has felt in years. It's a line of white, a taste of tin. He laughs. Then the gauntlet closes on his aura and the laugh cuts off. Frieza's energy is internal pressure, choreography, a perfect balance between muscle and will. The black gauntlet makes that pressure skid. It is an edit key. It reaches into his flow and zeroes a column. He drops a foot as his own beach becomes glass under him. The Dark Apostle tastes that flinch. He is not a swordsman. He is a preacher with a blade that likes him. He batters at Frieza not to wound him, but to annotate him, scrawling negations in the spaces where Frieza breathes. Each hit leaves no mark. Each hit changes something that was supposed to happen next. Frieza's tail whips and takes a word-bearer apart from groin to helmet. It isn't delicate. He does not like being edited. He shapes a miniature sun and slams it into the gauntlet. The sun shudders. The gauntlet drinks quiet like it drinks light. The Dark Apostle's grin widens with ecstasy and fear, because the thing on his hand is a leash in both directions. and the dog at the other end has noticed him. "See?" the apostle cries. "Even your fire can be tamed. Why not be more than fire?" The choir breaks into desperate hymn in the rafters. The notes cut jagged through the warp stink. The silent sister steps out of the shadow of the Inquisitor and raises a hand. Her field expands, a cold clarion. Frieza feels it as a room with all the furniture taken out. He finds he can breathe more cleanly in the emptiness. "Your hole is useful," he says to Lix without looking. "Gratitude from a Xenos," the Inquisitor murmurs. "That's new. Pragmatism," the Admiral says. His orders turn the Basilica into a die-cut killing zone. Heavy bolters chat angrily down the nave. Servitors die with prayers still in their mouths. Sisters of battle burn and sing. War is happening at all scales. Micro-beam, macro-litany. A pattern of blood like stained glass forming new saints for historians to name later. The Dark Apostle's sermons thicken. The walls want to listen. Shadows thicken where words stick. The blade in his hand finds Frieza's aura again and scribbles an insult along the bones. Frieza bares his teeth. "Enough," he says. Power spikes. He throws off his own restraint like a cape, then another and another. His body shrinks to the shape that is truest for purpose, sleek, lean, lined for speed, and then brightens. Gold floods his skin from within, a sovereign tint. His aura coils and then straightens into a corona that bites the nave's architecture and shakes the tiles. The nearest statues crack and look away. Golden Frieza is not a different man. He is the same man, refusing to apologize. He moves. In golden form, logic becomes a denser lattice. He enters gaps that weren't there and shows you they were always there. The Dark Apostle's demon blade swings wide and loses him. The gauntlet snatches at flows too thin to grip. Frieza appears behind the Apostle and taps the gauntlet with a finger. The touch is surgical. Blackstone sings like freezing metal. Cracks jump like lightning across facets. The gauntlet howls. The Apostle howls with it. Frieza catches the blade barehanded. It bites. He squeezes and listens to the steel complain. Then he lifts his other hand and decides to kill the man holding these toys. A whisper arrives first. Not in the ear, behind the eye. "You can be permanent," it says. And the word permanent is a temple full of kneeling worlds. You can edit your own edits. We can fix the inefficiency inside you called joy. You will never tire. You will never need. Frieza's grip loosens just enough for the blade to slide a centimeter. The cut burns. The whisper isn't cinch, or it is. But what matters is how it's phrased. It doesn't offer him pleasure. It offers him machinery. He looks around and sees a basilica full of worship, a city that obeyed when he told it to, an admiral who is practical enough to praise a monster, an inquisitor whose suspicion has the dignity of a creed. He looks down and sees a priest who thinks he's discovered a new god and wants to be the first to name him. "No," Frieza says. The blade slides another centimeter and then stops because Frieza stops it. "Why?" "Because I like the taste," Frieza says, conversational. "Of battle, of fear, of victory. I do not outsource my appetite." He narrows his fingers. The demon blade chips. The gauntlet, cracked, tries to rewrite his resolve. The Silent Sisters' nothing tries to simplify the rewrite. The choir sings themselves sick. The Inquisitor draws a hexagram with a blood-slick finger on the stones and shouts, "Now!" An engine chime answers her. Not a machine. A voice built like an engine. Gray knights step through a breach in the north transept, shrouded in wards, bolters already speaking. At their center, a librarian's eyes are eclipses. He lifts a hand and spreads a scripture made of equations through the air. It does not touch Frieza. It touches the Dark Apostle's grammar and makes it stutter. Sacred intervention doesn't save you. It tells you where to stand. Frieza stands there. He takes the blade. He takes the gauntlet. He puts the man holding them through 2 columns and into a pile of core bones and prophecy. The man writhes, grinning blood. God of dominion. The Dark Apostle gasps, delighted even in failure. It will be you or something worse. There is always a throne. Frieza looks down at him. Golden. Yes, he says. Me. The breach closes. The word-bearers die messily. Importantly, the Dark Apostle's sermon unhooks from the walls. The smell of ozone and prayer remains. Frieza's aura flickers. The golden form is a price paid. Oh, the mind jumps to metaphors. A furnace, a burn. But it is simpler. It is caloric math. It drinks reserves. Frieza feels the draw. He also feels the echo of the whisper. Not belief, not even temptation. Just the mechanical curiosity of a knife looking at a sharper one. He releases the gold. The light dims. The basilica exhales like a lung. The Inquisitor takes a breath she did not know she was holding. She wipes blood on her coat. She nods to the silent sister. The null nods back without smiling and returns to being the absence of a smile again. By the power vested in me by the God Emperor and his most holy Ordos, the Inquisitor says to Frieza, voice level, you are required to attend upon higher judgment. You will come to Terra. Frieza tilts his head. Because I killed your pasts. Because you are a new kind of past, she says. And because I suspect, and I say this with a professionalism you might respect, that you'd like to see the thing at the center. The Admiral watches Frieza watch the Inquisitor. He is gambling cities on a stranger's vanity, and knows it. Reach the throne, the Admiral says softly. More to himself than to either of them. We live in hope. Frieza considers the basilica ceiling, the repaired vault, the constellation of cracks he could have allowed to remain, and did not. He is not done with the world. He enjoys worlds most when they are on their knees looking up. The idea of someone whose knees do not bend is interesting. I accept, he says. I will visit your god. The governor, who has not stopped shaking since he came in, bows so low that his spine pops. Thank you, she whispers, and does not specify to whom. The word-bearers leave a stain in the air like soot you can taste. The city limps toward function, grateful in that unsettled way grateful things are when they wait to discover the price. Frieza steps onto a transport platform with the Inquisitor and the Admiral and the Silent Sister, and a clutch of gray knights whose weapons remain pointed anywhere but at the back of his head. He drifts 1 centimeter off the deck and does not tell anyone what that costs him. The fleet that lifts from Sanctis Ferrum is a spear with half its edges broken. It still gleams. Litany scratch shows where new prayers have been freshly written for engines that should have exploded. Frieza floats in a Medicae bay without touching the cot. Mechs and sisters argue around him about the sample they could take if he would let them. The sanctity of his blood, the blasphemy of wanting it. The chaplain arrives because chaplains arrive when wounds smell like decisions. Chaplain Severin is a Black Templar with a voice like ground glass. His Crozius is a book, bound in iron, that happens to also be a hammer. He watches Frieza with a butcher's eye, a scholar's patience. You are powerful, he says simply. Yes, Frieza says. You are proud. Yes. You are wrong. Frieza smiles. I win. Severin nods. For a season. They speak quietly as the ship hums around them. The Inquisitor watches from a distance and pretends she isn't. The Admiral sleeps in a chair because he has learned to sleep where survival happens. Sister Lix doesn't sleep at all. The Medicae lights flicker. Frieza rolls a small sphere of energy back and forth between his fingers, not quite touching the skin, watching the light deform at each knuckle. Your empire, Severin says, is a lie you tell yourself to enjoy the cruelty necessary to keep it. Frieza laughs, soft. All empires are that, not the Imperium, Severin says. Frieza raises an eyebrow, genuinely amused. You'll have to do better than that. The Imperium is a penance, Severin says. We do not pretend virtue. We perform obedience. There is a difference. The ship shudders. Warp translation is nausea disguised as choir music. Frieza does not vomit. He has never met a sea he could not bend. This sea is different. He listens to it. and does not like the song. On the second day of translation, alarms bloom. The navigator howls a warning no one can comprehend. An object collides with the Geller field like a fist hitting a candle. The field wobbles. The candle trembles. Engines cut power where they must, stoke where they must. The ship turns its own guts inside out and then back. The hololith shows a shape pacing them in a larger darkness. The darkness has an outline that pleases itself. The dark mechanicum likes mirrors. It has had time. It comes out of the warp like a knife coming out of a sheath, made from the wound it has just created. A shape that is a tithe of a titan, draped in chains, plated in blackstone and stained glass. At its heart, a throne. On the throne, something wearing Frieza's face made of steel. They learn quickly, the Admiral says between his teeth. Or they planned this the moment he appeared, the Inquisitor says. The eye births parodies. On the viewsphere, the thing opens its mouth and speaks in a logic that is mostly numbers. On the Medici deck, Frieza hears it inside his teeth. This is a better version of you, it says. It is patient. It would be. It does not tire. It is not seduced by moments. It never gets bored. The thing lashes out with the chain studded with dead stars. It wraps the Geller field and translates a portion of it into a different tense. The ship screams over a range most ears cannot hear. Bulkheads sweat. A Medici serf vomits prayer. Frieza goes out through the bay wall without opening it, because forms are for people with restrictions. Vacuum fails to impress him. He stands on nothing and looks his own steel face in the eye. His breath fogs a little. The only concession, he does not need breath. He enjoys the drama of it sometimes. The mirror swallows. Lights move under plates. A voice like his, pitched by a machine to handsomer, says, "Submit to standardization." Frieza flares gold in a tight skin to keep his heat close. He calculates fuel in an instant. He calculates too long. He still has to decide. He decides. What follows is not a duel of swords. It is beams and force and pace. It is the word impact underlined until it tears through. Frieza darts. Chains sting. Blackstone drinks. He learns the rhythm of that drink and works around it, darting into corners where silence is thinner. The mirror anticipates. It has a predictive routine. He breaks the routine by being petty. He breaks a decorative cherub statue fused to its hull. He does it with delicacy. The mirror pauses for a fraction of a fraction to process the insult. In the pause, Frieza is already inside its guard, fist on the plating that covers the throne. He does not aim for the pilot. He makes a hole that air rushes through, and then, with exquisite care, he reaches in and crimps a single cable between two fingers. Lights go out across a quarter of the machine. The chain lashing the Geller field drops slack. The ship breathes. The mirror tries to learn this too. It hadn't budgeted for insult. It adds a protocol. It divides itself. Frieza divides too. He becomes smaller in the ways that matter. He threads into a gap that only exists as a premonition. He slaps a dead star plate with his palm and leaves a print in nothing. The Astronomicon flares. You cannot see it directly. You can feel when someone else sees it, though. The way saints go to their knees simultaneously throughout a hull. The flare is a warning and a welcome. The mirror recoils, not from the light, but from the idea of it. It is not built for ideas. It is built for outcomes. It recalculates retreat. Reach the throne, the Inquisitor whispers. And it is not a strategy now. It is liturgy. The mirror slides backward into the wax of the warp and leaves no ripple. Frieza watches it go. His knuckles are bloodless. His aura dims by choice. He returns through the hole he made in the Medici wall and doesn't comment on the way human lungs fail at that juncture. The chaplain meets his eye. Perfection is a god's lie, Severin says. We pursue it anyway, but we do not believe it. Frieza considers him and says nothing. He is thinking about the cable he pinched and the way the mirror tried to be offended. Terra arrives. No one ever says that. Terra does not arrive anywhere. Terra is what you reach. The fleet coasts into the choke of defense stations, into the glare of the Astronomicon like a sun that speaks, into the litter of pilgrimage traffic and murder moonlight. Frieza stands at a viewport that shows nothing but gold and guns, and thinks, finally. The planet does not look back. It watches. The palace crowns half a continent. It looks like geology that chose to be architecture. The towers are prayers you can climb. The air tastes like iron and incense. Custodians meet them on a platform big enough for a city to land on. Their armor is the color of decree. Nulls walk among them like wells. Cherubim flutter. A band plays something that is both welcome and warning. Frieza floats 1 millimeter off the deck, because some gestures should be repeated until people learn to call them policy. No one bows. This is comfort. He hates bowing as ritual. He likes it as reflex. They take him through corridors that do not end, and then do. Cathedral mechanisms pivot. Gates cipher open. He passes saints that would forgive him. He passes saints that would not. The Inquisitor walks at his shoulder and feels small and refuses to show it. The Admiral feels too big and works to be smaller. Chaplain Severin mutters words that scuff the air. Sister Lix is a straight line through noise. They reach a place that is quiet like a threat. It is a hall with no art because the subject is present. 2 custodians step aside. A man in black robes that are broken monuments looks at Frieza with eyes that have seen too much, and then, because this is theater, gestures. The presence is not a man on a chair, but that is what they show you. It is heat and gravity and obligation and light that is old enough to recall darkness fondly. It is a corpse that chooses not to rot. It is a voice that does not speak in any sense a mouth understands. Frieza steps into it. The others stop. The door closes, not with any motion, but with necessity. It is quiet, like being underwater in a river that refuses to drown you, because drowning would be too easy. He waits. He's not comfortable with waiting. He decides to be. The presence allows him to decide things and experience their lack of consequence in this room. Speak, the presence says without sound. I am Frieza, he says aloud, because that is what you do in places where no one needs you to. I conquered worlds before I had words for conquest. Your galaxy is a lively ruin. I like it. I will take it. I saved a city because I wanted to own it. Your servants want me to be a dog. I am not a dog. I am something better. The presence does not say, prove it. He already has. The presence does not say, submit, because that is assumed here. Instead, it shows 3 doors open in a place where there are no walls. The first is a door into fog. Through it, Frieza sees himself leaving the palace with a smirk and a light promise to return. He sees himself throwing the palace a salute, like a soldier who will not be enlisted. He goes back to Sanctis Ferrum and to other worlds, and rules them with a sharpness that delights him. He is myth and rumor. He is useful when he is near. He is faithless when he is far. The Imperium treats him like a storm. Cross yourself, tie your house down, hope it waters your field instead of drowning your children. Over time, bureaucracy ossifies around his absence. Schisms sharpen. Fleets make flow charts. He breaks some and laughs. Others break him later, not in battle, but in the slow way that bridges break when people stop believing they can be maintained. He is free in the way fires are free. Many burn for it. He forgets why he came to Terra in the first place, until one day he remembers. And by then, the memory is a toy with the corners chewed. The second door is a door with edges that hurt to look at. Through it, Frieza sees himself taking a small step, and then a larger one, and then kneeling. The kneel is partial. It is also entire. He wears an aquila not on his chest. He does not wear chests, but in his aura, in the angle of his head, in the patience he shows when lesser men speak to him because they are necessary for the machine to turn. He becomes a crusader reluctant, and therefore perfect. He learns sigils. He agrees to be bracketed by nulls when he is in shrines. His power is multiplied because it is channeled. He is sent to places where the math is losing, the ghoul stars, the halo, the places where maps have to be burned after you draw them. He wins often. When he loses, the losses are proportionate to the scale of his choosing to be involved. He is a servant. It is efficient. His appetites change shape to fit the logistics of service. Something in him calls this death. Something in him calls this promotion. The third door is a door that looks like a guillotine blade laid horizontal, gleaming, sterile. Through it, Frieza sees peace, not forgiveness. Peace. It is the peace of being removed. The presence gently reaches into his head and takes the things that make him sharp and puts them somewhere safe. He becomes someone tractable. He lives on a world of little consequence as an immortal local legend who rescues people from small fires and smiles at children and never once vaporizes a city. Because he remembers he used to like to. The Imperium continues without him. It is arguably better for it. He never knows what else he might have done because he is content. He is happy enough. He is domesticated. He dies only when the presence decides it is suitable for a myth to end. Frieza watches each door with eyes that narrow at data he does not prefer. He is not fooled by the way they have been polished to make him want one over the other. He calculates blood prices. He counts not just bodies, but pleasures. Not just pleasures, but the meaningfulness of their acquisition. Choice looks like bowing, he says to the presence. Even when it isn't. Choice looks like responsibility. The presence answers. It is not a correction. It is a layer. Frieza stands there with the doors open and feels pride for a second. Not as a weapon, but as an organ. Something that can be fatigued and made stronger. He imagines the Inquisitor outside hoping for one door, and the Admiral hoping for another, and the Chaplain refusing to hope because hoping is a vice in men like him. He imagines Sister Lix not hoping at all. He thinks about Sanctis Ferrum looking up. Conditions, he says. The presence is not offended. It is too large for that. I will not slaughter humans who kneel, Frieza says. I will not defile your shrines. I will not touch your light. I will conquest what is not yours or what you cannot hold. I will break your enemies who gnaw on the edges. I will not be bored. Silence in a room like this is not the absence of noise. It is the presence of consideration. Boundaries, the presence says. And he hears approval in the way one approves a throwing knife for balance before using it. You will be leashed, the presence says in a different way. It does not threaten. It describes. Not to a wall, to a purpose. Frieza bares his teeth. I prefer collars to walls, he says. They show better. The presence shows him a symbol. It is an aquila, whose wings are edged like cold. It is a circle at its center that is not a halo, but a target that moves. It is an ugly, beautiful thing, and it suits him. He steps through the second door. He does it because the first is boring, and the third is an insult, and because he wants to see what happens when an empire meets a man who believes empire is a synonym for appetite. When he exits the hall, the custodians watch the set of his shoulders and decide not to decide what it means. The Inquisitor watches his eyes and reads a thing she refuses to describe with a human word. The Admiral sees a future where he may retire in dignity because he will have a war to fight that makes sense for once. The Chaplain sees a penance that now includes Frieza and is not sure whether to be relieved. Frieza's aura bears a new geometry. It isn't a cloak. He won't wear one. It isn't a tattoo. His skin is not that honest. It is light that holds the shape briefly of a double-headed bird before returning to an implied head tilt. A particular way he holds his spine. When he lifts a hand, you can see where a signet would be if he had fingers that desired rings. A custodian steps forward with a box. In it, A writ written on something that is not parchment but pretends. The High Lords have signed because they like history. The Inquisitorial Conclave has countersigned because they like aftermaths. The seal is large enough to be a plate. Warrant, the custodian says, not smiling, because that is not their job. Lord Regnant of the Western Halo. The cold mandate. The Inquisitor meets Frieza's gaze and holds it. You'll be watched, she says. You'll be ignored, he answers. Not cruel, merely informative. Sometimes that's worse, she says. And she is right. The pilgrimage escort reverses into a crusade escort without changing ships. The fleet points its bows like spears again. The bows have been sharpened. Chaplain Severin stands on a deck with Frieza and signals to the servitors, who ring bells because bells irritate demons in ways you cannot cheat with equations. Sister Lix stands at Frieza's other shoulder, like a negative image of a friend. They go to the place where the word-bearers retreated to breathe wrong. The Dark Apostle, Malak Vel, has stolen a fortress monastery and inverted it. He is preaching to slaves cut into letters. Frieza announces his arrival by deleting an orbital. It makes a nephrit moonlight through the atmosphere, veined with molten lines that will be sacred maps to the survivors' children. He does not burn cities. He removes the spine of the enemy's grammar, broadcast towers, hymn engines, scripture presses. Where word-bearers would underline with blood, he erases with neatness. The Admiral has a plan. Frieza reads it once and executes the punchline. Marines, loyal, breach where Frieza points and find the air has been removed from the rooms where the worst men stand. The Inquisitor's acolytes collect names. Frieza deletes names when names are not useful. He does it with a finger flick. They argue afterward. He wins because the argument has already been acted. Malak Vel meets him at the inner sermon. His gauntlet has been replaced with one more cracked, more beautiful, more dangerous. His demon blade is in love again. He looks at Frieza and sees a man wearing a church he did not build. Too late, the apostle sings. We've already written your story. Edit this, Frieza says, and moves. The duel is not as elegant as the first because Frieza is less interested in learning and more interested in finishing. He tolerates 3 cuts. 2 because they are useful. 1 because he misjudges his own impatience. He takes the gauntlet and breaks it with a Black Templar's Crozius because Chaplain Severin offers, and Frieza is learning to accept gifts when they are weapons. He takes the blade and hands it to a Grey Knight because the way the librarian recoils and then nods tells him it was the correct theater. Apotheosis, Malak Vel gasps as Frieza's hand enters his chest and closes like a cell door. You'll want it. All tyrants do. Not all tyrants are theologians, Frieza says, and puts out a man who wanted to be a candle by pinching the wick. They do not cleanse the planet so much as decide which parts of it need to die to let the other parts live. The difference smells like good work. The Inquisitor writes death warrants with her left hand and amnesty with her right, and checks both with Sister Lix, who is good at telling people when they're lying to themselves. The Admiral counts ships and runs a hand down the rail when no one is looking, because he is too old to pretend. Ships don't have personality. Chaplain Severin leads a prayer for the dead, and for the living who will carry the dead like weights in their hands, and also in their pockets, like coins. Frieza is given titles he ignores and responsibilities he does not. He chooses his own war zones, edges, infections at the seam between real and story. He uses nulls like punctuation, placing Sister Cadres where the warp slurs. He learns to let a choir start before he starts, because the song shapes the space in ways his beams do not. He is a tyrant and a function, and neither, and both. Word of him spreads. Eldar seers see a cold star added to their maps and try to speak around it. Their lips bleed when they say the wrong syllables. Orc war bosses tell stories about a little white git who punches like the end of a fight. Tau diplomats draft a communique that is elegant until it reaches his name. They replace the name with a pictogram, whose meaning is, do not attempt to incorporate. without loss of self. Necrons wake, taste his energy in the fossil record of new battlefields, and frown in unison, which reads as consent to their silent gods. Tyranids turn slightly, and then back, uninterested in spice when there is meat. Chaos remembers. In the eye, a future that was promised to someone else is penciled over. A prince of excess licks his lip for the taste of denial. A patron of change flips a page and is delighted that the new sentence scans. Korn is bored, and then less so. Nurgle knits a small doll with purple beads for eyes and waits. A fleet in the ghoul stars carries a demon like a crown. Frieza takes the crown and wears it as a belt. And then, as an anecdote, he learns cost. Golden form still drains him, even more so when nulls stand near, the absence making his engine work harder to generate the same shape. He manages the drain as a professional manages fatigue, by scheduling it. He chooses to arrive late to some battles because being on time would mean arriving ruinous. The Admiral learns to plan for the late arrival of a miracle and to survive without it when the miracle is elsewhere. Civilians learn to tell stories that are almost true while the Lord Regnant is away. He puts down a rebellion on Sanctis Ferrum, not by incinerating the ringleaders, but by visiting the Habs they promised to save first and extinguishing the fires they needed lit to justify their slogans. He then incinerates the 3 responsible men in front of their constituencies and leaves the ashes where children must step over them to reach school. The governor learns to govern again. Which is harder? The Inquisitor never stops watching. She never apologizes. She saves him once. Saves, yes, by placing Sister Lix at his shoulder in a room that sings too well. He nods to her without smiling. They do not require each other's affection to be necessary. Chaplain Severin dies well, not dramatically. Drama is for others. He dies like a lock snapping into place in a door that required exactly his pressure, applied exactly there, over exactly that many years. Frieza says a word over his body, because words matter when they are not plentiful. The word is not friend. It is function. The chaplain would have approved. A new paladin arrives. A sister's canoness, with scar-silver cheeks, and a voice that can direct artillery by tone alone. They argue about a shrine that needs to burn, because an infestation has reached the relics. Frieza says burn. She says not yet. He says the infestation eats faith faster than fire eats wood. She says, yes, but fire eats faith too. They wait one day. They save something that is bigger than the relic. He does not say she was right in those words. He tells her to be present at the next fire. That is how he says it. Years fold. Maps change. Someone tries to assassinate him with a Calexis and a Blackstone bullet and a compensating prayer. The bullet enters his aura and loses interest. The prayer keeps going until Sister Lix steps between it and him and eats it with her absence. Frieza watches her and considers mortality like a new fruit on a plate he hasn't tried yet. He meets Eldar on a bridge made of employed regret. A Farseer shows him a future where he does not choose. He rips the page and eats it. The Farseer weeps and thanks him for the lesson, whether she means it or not. He fights a Necron Pharaon who has replaced his heart with an algebra proof. Frieza finds the place where the proof loops and yawns and slides a thought in. The heart shortens itself to correct, and in the shortening, it stops. He fights a demon engine that calls itself his son because someone put a fragment of his energy into its furnace in a ritual under a different sky. He ignores the word and punches. He says, "You are a lever," and it breaks like a lever used incorrectly. He refuses apotheosis routinely. It is easier each time, and therefore more dangerous. On a day when the sky over Sanctis Ferrum is genuinely blue for once, a child looks up at him as he passes with an honor guard of sisters and guardsmen, and a small retinue of terrified nobles who are pretending they are not. The child's arm is in a sling. She raises her other hand, shy, and makes the shape with her fingers that children have started making. 2 fingers extended, 2 folded. A little tail with the thumb. It is a joke on the Aquila. It looks like him. Frieza stops without making a display of stopping. The retinue stumbles to match. He looks down. The child nearly faints. He raises his hand and returns the sign. Micro small, just for her. And then he moves on. In the eye, laughter like broken glass spills into a chalice. Things gather symbols. The Prince of Excess hums. He is gathering one. The Patron of Change folds another page. He thinks it is his, it says, delighted. So it is. The War Master of a Black Crusade hears the rumor that the Imperium has given a Xenos a writ that shames old lords and laughs out loud at how perfect a provocation it is. He vows to skin the small tyrant's pride and wear it as a glove. This is a vow he intends to keep. On a dead world, a woman who once prayed for Frieza by mistake prays for him again on purpose. Her candles gutter. Her son, who is alive because of a finger flick and an energy calculus, becomes an engine technician and writes a prayer in a machine that has his mother's grammar. The machine runs better. The Adeptus Mechanicus opens 3 files about him. One is public and is worship. One is private and is analysis. One is treason and is desire. They build a model of him with cogitators and dream about how to box it. The Dark Mechanicum builds their own and dreams about how to mate it with something that will ruin a city properly next time. The High Lords toast him in whispers and curse him in committee. The Inquisitorial Conclave argues whether Ordo Xenos owns him or Ordo Malleus, or if no one should and everyone must. They agree on nothing and proceed. On Terra, a body sits and does not rot. It thinks a thought about collars and walls and purposes and symbols. And perhaps if anyone could hear it, they would hear laughter that is not laughter at all. Just a shift in weight. In the western halo, a fleet with a new sigil burns toward a star that has petitioned for mercy. Frieza stands at the prow, because that is where you stand when you want to be a symbol. The sigil behind him is a twin-headed bird, with edges you can cut yourself on. It suits him. He enjoys how it looks on his shadow. The Admiral comes to stand at his side. He does not ask permission. He has earned it. Report, Frieza says. 3 worlds. 1 detox. 1 excision. 1 judgment. The Admiral says, voice flat. He has stopped tasting blood when he says that last word. He is alive anyway. Frieza nods. Good. He could explain why it is good. He does not. Explanations have their own appetite. He lets the bridge hum, and the crew believe they understand the math, when really, the math understands them. Sister Lix glides through the human noise like logic. The Inquisitor speaks low into a bead, not to him, but in a way that indicates she assumes everything she says near him is part of his field now. She is adapting productively. Chaplain Severin's successor has a voice that has been trained not to crack. It cracks anyway sometimes, and is stronger for it. Lord Regnant, someone says from a station. It is not a title he would have chosen. It is one he enjoys hearing. Contacts. Translations on the rim. Chaos marked. Frieza lifts his hand. Light blooms like obedience. Warm up the choir, he says. Bring me my whole. This last to Sister Lix, who nods once and steps into position without any offense at being reduced to function. It is not a reduction when the function saves a city. He angles his body and feels the geometry of the new sigil settle around him. It is not a crown. It is a sight picture. He steps into it like an archer steps into a stance that is already killed. Dominion, he says softly, to himself, to the bridge, to the room inside the palace where he chose. Mine. Outside, the enemy opens like a flower teaches a skull how to bloom, and the cold light that answers is the kind that keeps things alive by keeping other things quiet. The first wave fails the way they always fail now, against the fact that grace and violence, when diagrammed correctly, look the same. The second wave brings a blade that drinks concepts and a prayer that edits negations. Frieza's aura flickers and holds. The choir hits the right verse. Sister Lix removes the wrong verse. The Admiral's plan has an arrow-shaped hole that Frieza fits into. They are different, these people and this creature, and they are the same thing now when they need to be. The world is worse for it, in a way that keeps it alive. When the battle ends, the planet rotates like a slow coin deciding how it will land. The fleet rights light across space to claim it. A child on the planet will grow up to say, "I saw a little man in gold burn the sky clean." And a priest will correct her, and she will nod. And then she will draw a bird with sharp wings in the margin of her homework and think about both truths until she can hold them without dropping either. On a rust moon in the eye, a parody in Blackstone, repaired and sulking, punches a wall and calls that training. It vows in a voice polished past sincerity to be ready next time. It tells itself a story about perfection. The story is almost good. It will kill many for being almost. On Terra, a presence thinks again without motion about collars and purposes, and how sometimes the best tool for a job is a knife that refuses to pretend to be a spoon, and how one must never confuse useful with safe, never confuse loyal with predictable, and never forget that mercy is a budget line with blood as currency. Frieza holds in his hand a little sun and extends it toward the enemy, the way a man offers a dog a treat to teach it the meaning of the word no. He smiles because he enjoys work done well, and because the work is him, the sigil behind him sharpens. The choir hits a note that tastes like iron. The galaxy watches a symbol become a policy, and policies become weather, and weather becomes myth. People always believed this is how it worked. It is always new when it is happening to you. The cold mandate writes another line into its warrant. The seal is heavy. Frieza's finger leaves an impression in wax, like a crater on a soft world. The impression looks like an eye. It looks like a coin. It looks like consent. He flicks his hand. The light goes, and something ugly dies beautifully. There is always a throne. There is always a man who thinks he deserves it. There is always a god who knows the cost of letting him try. When the fleets turn for home in whatever direction home is for each of them, the last image on the holos and the last rumor in the habs is the same. A small, white figure gilded by its own force, standing in front of a bird whose wings are too sharp to be safe, asking not for belief, but for obedience, and getting both, which is as close to literal magic as this galaxy ever allows. On Sanctis Ferrum, where this began, the cathedral roof holds. Sometimes, on clear days, children throw up their hands in that silly new sign and laugh, and parents allow it, and priests pretend not to see, and a chaplain passing through smiles despite himself and says a private prayer for knives that kill the right things first. In the eye, old things change their schedules. In the palace, a man who isn't a man at all continues not to rot. In the halo, stars form slower because of all the heat, and in the space between a finger and a flick, an empire continues to define mercy as the time it takes for obedience to travel from a mouth to a knee. That time is measured in light. Frieza loves light. He throws it like a ruler throws a feast. He intends to be remembered for both. They name the campaign before it starts, because humans insist on myth at the planning stage. Ghast's Gate is a fortress world, ringed by pilgrim satellites like beads on a rosary. The void around it is a funnel through which 3 subsectors breathe. The Voxnet is a nervous system that hums with market prayers and troop manifests and pledges to the saints. When the augurs taste corruption at extreme range, a tang of iron that isn't iron, a litany that recites itself, the gate tightens its ring and lights every gun. In the command amphitheater, people stand rather than sit, because sitting looks like doubt. Admiral Cade studies the projected orrery, a chalk-white planet swarmed by bands of vector arrows and threat glyphs, every line a proposal for what will be cut away to save something else. Inquisitor Thorn watches him instead of the map, because good maps are always made by people. and she needs to read which parts of him intend to live through this. Canoness, Seraphine of the Martyred Rose, is here now. Helm tucked under her arm, a scar on her cheek like a pale rosary bead. She's the new paladin the war has given Frieza, and she is harder to argue with than Severin, because her concessions are not rhetorical. They are physical places on the ground. She will stand until someone moves her, or she dies. Sister Lix waits behind Thorn, a dark absence that makes adamantine read as wool. The Grey Knight's librarian, eyes eclipsed as always, draws sigils in the air and erases them before anyone can read. Frieza floats at the edge of the table like indifference given musculature. "Word bearers again?" the Admiral asks. Dry. Thorn shakes her head, mouth tight. Black Legion Vanguard. And something blue in their wake that isn't ocean. "Lord of Change," the librarian says, voice low as a bulkhead. "Archivist of Unbecomings. He edits vows." "Charming," Cade says. "We just wrote new ones. They'll try to take them apart," Thorn agrees. Then, to Frieza, he targets promises. "Your warrant is a promise. The warpsmiths are with him. Expect Blackstone elements. Expect attempts to rewrite your mandate into a leash you hate enough to chew." Frieza rolls a small sphere of light across his knuckles, not touching, watching the way it dimples at each bone, as if the world has been designed to suit him. "They've tried editing before. Not like this," says the librarian. "This one will try to delete the conditions you set." Frieza tilts his head, eyes bright and amused the way knives are amused by wood. "We are saved by stipulations. Remove them, and I become interesting." "Precisely," Thorn says, "which is why he'll try. He wouldn't tempt you. He'll improve you." Canoness Seraphine speaks without looking at him. "And then he'll weaponize the improved you against whatever you would have spared." Frieza smiles. "Objects that argue back entertain me. What's the plan?" They place the choir as geometry rather than ornament. The canoness combs through her order's ledger and selects 22 voices that have suffered properly. Not melodrama, but the kind of pain that turns notes into edges. The librarian seeds the void with countersongs. Printed math hung in space like invisible nets for an invisible fish. Sister Lix walks the planned battleground like a surveyor, measuring where her nothing will do more than defensive work, where it can be bait. The Admiral positions macro batteries where the enemy will not expect devotion to look like steel. Thorn sends a message to Terra that is not a plea, not a warning, just a record. Because records save you when you are forced to answer for mercy later. Frieza listens to the plan as one listens to weather, deciding which parts to ignore and which to bend. "Bait them with pilgrims," he says. "They expect your piety to be a weakness. Use it." Canoness. Seraphine turns her head an imperceptible degree. "I won't." "Then processions of relics," he says without heat. "Empty reliquaries, full choir." "Those are not toys," she says, a growl of steel over silk. "Tools," he answers. "Do not confuse reverence with fragility." She holds his gaze, a long breath. "Empty reliquaries," she says at last. "Full choir." The enemy arrives like a policy reversing itself at scale. The Black Legion ships cut in at wrong angles as if reality is a bureaucrat they have decided to fire. Their prows wear chained saints and saints' chains. Behind them, a structure that does not belong in void emerges in layers. Towers on towers, stairs without steps, corridors whose doors open into the moments before they were built. The Archivist of Unbecomings is not visible, but his work is. Runes writ backward across hulls, banners with words that refuse to stay read, an aura that walks around your memory and rearranges furniture. Ghast's gates, orbital guns salute. Hymn engines bellow. The choir begins. The first verse is simple, because simplicity cuts cleaner. Frieza goes out alone because he is not alone. He carries the choir with him, lines of sound running from the singers' throats to the geometry of his aura. He keeps his light close. Golden form is a price. He pays by degrees. The Lord of Change appears in a fold of concept, like a librarian stepping from behind a shelf at the exact moment you realize you have misshelved yourself. He is tall and blue and old and new at once, feathers like script, eyes like margins, beak tasting syllables. His staff is the contradiction that remains employed. His first act is not to smite. He edits air into a sentence that says, "You promise to spare the kneeling." The sentence then deletes the kneeling. Frieza feels it as a catch in his wrist. He flicks a finger toward a raiding craft that is angled for a hospital, and his beam wobbles, turns hunting, searches for a non-kneeler to satisfy the removed condition. The ship sneers toward a shrine instead. He frowns. He does not like a universe that thinks it can joke with him. Lix steps into place below. The hole she carries expands, a cold grammar. The edited sentence runs to the edge of her field and stops because there are no verbs in nothing. The choir hits the second verse. It enumerates the boundaries of mercy in a cantor's ledger voice, naming what will not be done and why. The warp song balks at specificity. The archivist speaks without opening his beak. The speech is addressed to Frieza's warrant, and therefore to Frieza. Authority is theft with paperwork, he tells him. Let me make you legal in more ways. Stop pretending you enjoy limits. You do not need to kneel to be obedient to yourself. Frieza answers him aloud, because sound in vacuum is ridiculous, and therefore a humiliation for the wrong kind of god. You very much want me to be bored, he says. The staff swings. Concepts splinter. Frieza closes the distance and hits the bird demon in the throat with the butt of his hand. The impact sends a ripple through a story the demon tries to tell. The ripple erases 3 footnotes. The archivist laughs anyway, a rustle of dead paper caught in a vent. The Black Legion champion comes when the bird fails to entertain properly. He strides through hard vacuum with the authority of someone who has taken oaths and turned them into belts. His armor is black like memory, where sin's been polished out. His blade is a bar of absence called Void Promise. Its edge drinks obligations. The first slash does not touch Frieza. It opens his sigil. It is cleanly done. The cold Aquila flaring behind Frieza as a policy shivers. One wing dims, not in light but in meaning. On the bridge of the flagship, a junior officer drops her rosary and forgets to pick it up. On the planet, a child raises her hand to make the silly new sign and stops, embarrassed, not remembering why she liked it. Frieza feels the cut like a bruise on a piece of himself that was never flesh. His smile thins. The champion's Vox sneers. You're a counterfeit, he says. Borrowed vestments on a tyrant. Let me simplify you back to what you were. Frieza does not answer him. He answers the choir. Verse, he says, and the canoness signals. The 22 voices shift to the litany of warrants, that dry and holy document song. The melody is ugly because law is ugly. It pleases the right things. The librarian spreads a lattice of logic behind the voices. Sister Lix's field locks to its edges. Negative space held like a blade. Frieza steps into the reknitting and meets the champion's next cut with the tail he pretends is decoration. Bone meets demon tech. The tail is the better implement. He doesn't parry. He redirects. The absorption blade drinks obligation from a place he has just vacated. He hits the champion's breastplate twice. Once where the sigils are thickest. Once where the blackstone cable under the plate carries a hum you'd call prayer if you were very foolish. Both strikes are small. Both are the kind of insult that machines do not budget for. Void Promise veers for his throat. Frieza is not there. He is behind the champion, fingers at the plate seam, and then inside the seam, and then holding a loop of black cable between thumb and forefinger. He pinches. The blade gutters. The champion staggers. The archivist screeches, offended on principle. The champion recovers like a doctrine reasserting itself. He shifts stance. He knows that he has lost a secret and that he will not get it back. He becomes brutality. Frieza lets him. He wants the blade away from his symbol. He wants punches and simple cuts, and a moment that is just muscle and will. He gives the man a gift. He takes one cut down the ribs and another across the forearm. He is not clumsy. He is paying. Golden light licks out, then thins. He will not pay broadly here. He keeps his wealth close. Say it, the champion taunts, breath frosting in the cold that is not cold. Say you are theirs. Frieza smiles in a way that shows a beautiful lack of humility. I am mine, he says, and I work here. He moves. He doesn't faint. He tells the truth about where he'll be, and then arrives there faster than the truth can be disbelieved. His hand closes on the champion's throat. The tail spears the void, not the man. The man, surprised by mercy in a place he did not prepare for it, hesitates for one syllable of one oath. Frieza uses the syllable for murder. He crushes the larynx. He turns the man's head a quarter turn further than necks are supposed to turn. He lets the body go, because bodies are poor tools after that. The blade wobbles. The librarian reaches out with math like a hard glove and arrests the blade before it writes on anyone else. The archivist hisses a line of invective that would turn a saint to marrow. The choir answers with a tax code. Lix's field blanks the oath mid-clause. Frieza vanishes and reappears with his hand around the demon's staff mid-shaft. He holds and does not burn. He looks down the length of it, the way a butcher looks down a bone. You catalog, he tells the thing. I curate. He snaps the staff. It shrieks along axes that enforcement officers recognize. The Lord of Change becomes many birds and one wound, then reforms in an uglier draft of himself. He retreats, because this is not the day his thesis is accepted. The fleet is less philosophical. They throw boarding torpedoes like punctuation. Macro cannon right staccato into the enemy's hull. The choirs climb the ledger to the verse where exceptions are listed. You can hear the hesitation, and then the relief as they sing them. There are some mercies that are not negotiable. The planet below holds its breath and does not exhale until the last Black Legion ship claws back into the space, where forgetting looks like victory. After, the gate counts itself with shaking hands and finds it still has enough fingers to make a fist. Canoness. Seraphine meets Frieza on a cathedral roof pitted with new shrapnel. She wipes blood, hers, off the chin of a saint. The statue looks stubbornly forward. You risked the symbol, she says. No preamble. He cut it. You held it together, he says. He does not say thank you. He looks at her scar. She does not hide it. They brought a knife for my pride. You brought a ledger. She stares at him. You brought restraint. Only because I enjoy choosing, he says. She almost smiles. Almost. Keep enjoying it, she says. We can afford you liking it. We cannot afford you not. Sister Lix sways a fraction. Thorn notices before anyone else. She steps, not toward, but into Lix's path, the way you catch a falling blade with a scabbard you trust. Frieza watches the null and calculates a kind of exhaustion he doesn't have a word for, because he has never had to budget absence before. He nods to Medicae. They care for the sister with hands that are reverent without being soft. The canoness places 2 fingers to Lix's brow. Not a benediction. A measurement. We'll need 2 nulls for the next one, Thorn says under her breath to Frieza. You pull hard on the field. I pay for luxury, he answers. You will bill me appropriately, she snorts. Consider yourself invoiced. Terra reads the after-action with particular attention to clauses. The High Lords break into their usual committees. Valor, logistics, outrage, and make their usual noises. The Senatorum's master of the administratum proposes a new codicil. No bombardment of shrines without triple countersignature. The master of the Ministorum insists it is already the rule and stamps it twice to be seen stamping. The Captain General of the Custodes says nothing. The Fabricator General's representative salivates mechanically over the data on Blackstone stress fractures and requests an embargo on reporting details to the Forge Worlds, with reputations for curiosity. Inquisitor Thorn argues for more sisters, fewer theatrics, more documented boundaries. She wins 2 of 3, because winning all three would tell against her later. The Conclave sends a message to Frieza that is not a reprimand and not a love letter. It is a nesting of permissions with teeth. He reads it and revises his own internal ledger. Shrines, triple sign-off. He writes the rule in himself as a velocity rather than a law. He likes his rules kinetic. The mirror returns where the void is thinnest, not warp close, but logic distant. The Western Halo has a region charts labeled the Silent Belt, a parsec-wide undersong where pulse is damp and vox thins, and ships sound like rooms with carpets. The mirror favors places like this now. It thinks quiet will make him easier to standardize. It arrives draped in coilwork that is Blackstone learned to write cursive. The coils hum in a scale that makes some men weep and some grind their teeth. The mirror speaks in a voice even better at being him than last time. It smiles with more sincerity. It carries a small bell that rings at a frequency that thinks you're a statistic. Frieza goes to meet it without a fleet at his back. This is both vanity and strategy. He wants to see what it will do when stripped of variables. He brings two sisters, Lix, recovered, and a second null named Sister Vaunt, whose field feels like the memory of Frost rather than Frost. He brings no choir this time. He intends to learn a different lesson. The mirror opens with a gift, a packet of predictions that map his next 8 movements. The movements are accurate, to 3 decimal places. It doesn't ask him to perform. It tells him which version of himself scores higher. Frieza laughs. "You made me clever," he says. "You should have made me petty." He does not take the 9th move. He reaches past space and takes the mirror's bell. He flicks it into the quiet so it rings in the wrong place. The coils stutter. One line in a paragraph suddenly italicized. The silent region roils like a lake when a weight falls through ice. The mirror recalculates and overfits. Its coils cinch. Blackstone drinks the black out of space and begins to pull at Frieza's golden form, even while he keeps it tucked. Lix and Vaunt step into overlapping null stances. Their fields do not add. They interfere. The interference makes a lace of absence with holes in precisely the wrong places. Frieza moves where the holes aren't, as if dancing on a negative dance floor. The mirror lunges with a chain of dead stars and a predicate. Submit to thermodynamic optimization. Frieza has no difficulty refusing. He speaks the refusal like an insult he has been waiting to deliver since the first time he learned the word enough. He puts his hand to the coil and sets his own symbol alight, not as display, as torch. The cold aquila flares and acts as a lens. What passes through its barbed wings emerges edged. He cuts one coil. He lets the mirror feel pain and know it as betrayal of its premise. Machines that promise permanent can tolerate many things. Betrayal is not one. The mirror drops strategies like ballast. It reaches the way the first one reached. Chain, predictive push, absence blade. He refuses to be improved in order. He does the wrong thing right. He steps out of the routine and into an error state, and then becomes the error state. It tries to force a choice on him because it has learned that choices hurt him. He obliges it, not by choosing, but by showing it 3 doors. He throws his memory at it like a weapon, not his past, the throne room, the doors, the choices. It is not magic. It is theater with edges. The mirror evaluates the options as it must. It chooses efficiency. It always will. The room where it finds itself doesn't like that answer. Paradox is not his weakness here. It is the machine's. It hangs for the one fraction when an infinite loop thinks it is clever. Frieza puts his hand into the throne cavity and tears the pilot out by cables and rib, and an aesthetic cruelty that is almost kind given the alternative. The coils sag. Blackstone dies like a trapped thing relaxing because the trap is broken. He holds the pilot, a warpsmith with a face pulled into the long expression of someone who loved something unlovable on purpose, and studies him. He can smell the ritual grease, the sorrow that so often comes with machine love, the arrogance that felt like service while it lasted. You tried to make me a policy that writes itself, Frieza says. I write me. The warpsmith bleeds black, then red. All kings crave law, he whispers. You'll die from boredom or from a rule. We just wanted to help you pick. Frieza squeezes until the whisper makes a sound that is not a word, and then not at all. He lets the body tumble. Sister Vaunt steadies Lix with a hand. Lix steadies Vaunt with her absence. Back at Ghast's gate, murals begin. You cannot stop them. The Ministorum doesn't try. It inserts priests into the artists' families instead. The cold Aquila appears in stained glass, not because a Canaanist asked, but because children drew it on walls, and someone with money saw that graffiti and hired a stonemason. The symbol is forbidden in certain contexts and required in others. This is how policy becomes weather. The Adeptus Mechanicus builds a small shrine around a shard of the broken coil and gives it an innocuous name in a ledger to keep the curious away and the devoted near. A Magos chants to it. A tech adept touches it and dreams of a corridor where doors open onto rooms filled with integers instead of air. The Magos disciplines the adept for dreaming about integers. The adept is promoted. The Eldar send a skein-tongue message that says, if you keep him like this, he will eventually intersect our catastrophe. They do not propose a solution. The solution would be a different catastrophe. The message is courtesy, or pity, or spite. The Conclave files it under consistent with long-term models. Inaction recommended. The Tau try a second communique, with less elegance and more urgency. It asks, obliquely and politely, whether collaboration is possible within the strictures of the Cold Mandate. The reply is one sentence. Yes, if you kneel. The Tau do not send a third message. Orcs invent a game called Freeze Tag, where you pretend to be a little white git who moves too fast, and anyone you point at has to fall over until someone louder than both of you says the rhyme is done. They forget the rhyme every time and punch each other to remember it. Necrons write his signature into a caution table alongside phenomena like, time reversal seems fun until you're inside it. A Pharaon orders an experiment to measure the cost of his golden flare on nearby reality. The experiment goes wrong only once, which the Pharaon counts a success. On Terra, a rumor breathes like smog that the Lord Regnant is being considered for an honor that is not a rank and not a chain, a place in the calendar. The master of the Ministorum kills the rumor with a sermon about humility. The rumor survives because sermons are fertilizer. Inquisitor Thorn meets Frieza in a corridor of Ghast's gate on a day with no battle in it. The corridor is high as no corridor needs to be. Sun lances from stained glass onto stone. The glass shows a bird with sharp wings and a small white figure standing before it, as if it's a hearth. She walks at his pace, which is slower than his speed. I want it said, she says, that you have kept to your conditions. You can say it, he answers. People will call it politics. They will be right. I will say it anyway, she says, because people also need a clear sentence to hold when their hands are shaking. He glances at her. Do your hands shake, Inquisitor? Every day, she says. We train them to do it where it doesn't show. He laughs, genuinely. We are not so different. No, she says, we are not. That is why we will have to kill you if you become bored. They keep walking. Neither speeds up. Neither slows. In the halo, the War Master's vow ripens. He sends a letter of war, a black knife wrapped in the skin of a saint, delivered to the prow of Cade's flagship by a teleportarium strike team that dies entirely to set their gift on the rail and step back. The knife is beautiful in the way math is beautiful when you're the one who wrote it. Cade lifts it with tongs. Canoness Seraphine looks at it and says a word she will confess later. Thorn orders it boxed and delivered to a vault where the sisters sing all the time even when the lights are off. Frieza looks at the knife and says, next time, Send a spine. Consider it promised, comes the War Master's reply across too many channels from too many mouths. The promise will be kept. But not yet. There are smaller wars to win first, because large wars are collections of small good work and small vicious luck. On Sanctis Ferrum, a teacher draws the cold Aquila on a slate. She is not evangelizing. She is explaining traffic. If you see this in void, she says, chalk tapping the bird's barbed wing, you stay behind the line. It means exclusion zone. It means keep the kneeling out of the killing. It means wait until the fire is done. A boy raises his hand. I thought it meant him. It does, she says, chalk pausing. Because symbols are greedy. They take more than one meaning if you let them. It means him. And it means the places he promised us would not burn. It means both. Learn both, so you can live inside both. He nods. He draws it on his desk. The chalk scrapes. He gets the tail wrong. He corrects it without erasing the first line. The corrected line looks like a scar. He is proud of it. He should be. The cold Aquila appears on a hull nose cone, then another, then becomes a doctrine in a battle fleet manual, not as a symbol, but as a geometry for fire arcs that minimize pilgrim casualty while maximizing heretic evaporation. Officers write it on their palms before a push. It stops being ink when it sinks into nerve. Sister Lix and Sister Vaunt lunch together in a refectory where sound dies shy of walls. They do not converse much. Conversation wastes silence. Vaunt places a small scrap of stained glass on the table, blue with a hint of white, and says, "From a window they replaced. It was spoken for. I bought it with a vow." Lix touches it, and the color dims just where her finger is. They both watch. They both smile, the way you smile at a wave that knows your name but won't say it. Frieza's golden form remains athirst. He schedules it. He trains squadrons and captains to arrive in the gap between his bright assaults and his breath. He is the miracle you can put on a chart now. He keeps one surprise for himself at any given month, like a miser hides a coin in a wall. He refuses apotheosis thrice in 1 week. 2 times for little invitations dressed as men. 1 time for an offer the size of a storm. Each refusal costs less. He's not a fool. He asks the chaplain's successor to craft him a word that makes refusal cost more again. The man returns with an ugly old syllable from a dead dialect. Frieza bites it and finds it bitter. And good. He uses it. The cost rises. He stays entertained. He cleans a plague moon with neatness and doesn't wipe his hands after. He spares a Genestealer cult because the canoness says the fire would reach a reliquary, and she can hold the whole grid by faith another day if he gives her that day. He grants it. He kills the patriarch when the day is done. He puts the skull under a glass bell in the Medici, where mothers pass and spit on the glass. This is medicine. He loses a world and doesn't flinch. The War Master takes it by landing a mountain on the wrong continent and drilling a hole down to where people keep their certainty. Frieza leaves, not because he is afraid, but because he has built a policy of not dying on worlds that have already chosen death. He gives the War Master nothing but a promise returned. Spine. Cade keeps ships flying by hand and habit. Thorn keeps him from retirement with a smile and a directive. Canoness Seraphine refuses a laurel with a look that breaks the laurel's heart. Lix and Vaunt live long enough to watch sisters who trained on their absences develop styles of denial that look like art. The librarian teaches a page of math to a child on a dock who thinks numbers are saints because they don't lie unless you ask them to. The mirror that isn't returns in a smaller version somewhere stupid and dies immediately because petty scores settled themselves across time. And Frieza does not forget insults, even when he pretends to. Rumors accrue like dust. One says he knelt in the throne room and cried. Another says he sat in the Emperor's chair, and the room laughed. Another says he broke his own tail to teach a lesson to a boy who would not stop sneering. None of these are true. Enough are kind that they do no harm. Enough are cruel that they do good. He stands on a prow again. because he likes to repeat gestures until they become ownership. The bird behind him is still sharp. He has come to enjoy the cut. They say a heretic cardinal in a black sector has built a cathedral of moving parts that eats choirs and digests hymns into engines. They say a Tau enclave has a poem about him that children recite in PE to improve their sprint times. They say an Eldar witch wrote his name on a mirror, and the mirror did not fog. They say a Necron crypt's logic engine assigned him a category that had to be invented in the moment: mobile discouragement. They say orcs have learned the exact pitch of his name that causes fistfights to start and end in 5 minutes instead of 5 days. And that this is bad for morale. The War Master is almost here. You can hear his name ripple through the eye like a boat wake. Cade orders extra drills because nearly is a tricky distance. Thorn rewrites 3 internal memos and a doctrine on her way to sleep. Seraphine checks the fittings of a reliquary and smiles to herself at a joke no one will get because it requires 30 years of vows to make sense. Lix visits the Medikey, where her pulse on the monitor is a set of parentheses. Vaunt buys another square of glass. Frieza doesn't sleep the night before the torrent. He doesn't need sleep. He has learned to appreciate it when it arrives because it feels like choosing again. He walks Ghast's gate alone. The security spirits don't challenge him. They preen. He stands in the nave where he first killed a sermon and looks up at the repaired ceiling that has held since. He could ruin it in an instant and then unruin it, which is worse than ruin. He does not. He listens to the building hold its breath and thinks about hands. He has no hands you would call hands, but he has worked. This is his surprise, at learning where to put warmth. He puts it on the stones now with his feet. He speaks aloud into the empty space, because empty spaces deserve witnesses. You said purpose, not wall. He says to the air, to the throne room, to his own hunger. I am keeping my side. Keep yours. The dawn is nothing. Void has no dawn. The armada that arrives turns it into morning, whether it wants it or not. Black armor fills screens like punctuation nailed to the end of a sentence. Demon engines howl at frequencies philosophy should never attend to. A planet's worth of cults opens their windows to watch the sky end. The cold mandate brings its ledger and its knives. It brings a symbol it has turned into geometry. It brings a small white tyrant who is not a dog and not a god, and more useful than either, who has learned to like rules because they make the exceptions taste sharper. The first exchange is talk at speed, Vox channels screaming liturgy and hate, banners unspooling across hatches, code keys traded like antibodies. The second is light, the third is close, the fourth will be long. Frieza lifts his hand. Golden light blooms but tight. A blade, not a bonfire. The choir hits the verse that says, what will not be burned, and why. Sister Lix and Sister Vaunt walk into their holes and stand there like wells dug in the right field. Admiral Cade's voice is a metronome. Canoness Seraphine points, and the ground obeys. Inquisitor Thorn asks less and orders more, because the time for questions will return if, and only if they make it. The War Master speaks in 100 mouths, a handsome promise. All thrones are appetites pretending to be chairs, he says. Come be honest. Frieza smiles. I am, he says, and moves. The camera, if there were one, would pull back until both symbols fit in the frame. The 8-pointed star, riding itself across the void, and the sharp-winged bird cutting through it at a deliberate angle that looks like mercy, and is also murder. The voiceover, if there were one, would be quiet and unafraid, and it would tell you a secret, that sometimes the difference between tyranny and stewardship is nothing more than an invoice paid on time and the refusal to be bored by the ledger. The image, if there were one, would fix on Frieza, tiny and gilded. A cruelty with a calendar. A knife that has learned to be a ruler when a ruler is the right shape of knife. Behind him, The cold aquila shines harder than it should. Ahead of him, a promise of a spine to be taken. He loves work that looks like this. He loves choosing. He intends to keep doing both until someone smarter than a god stops him. This is what the galaxy gets instead of peace. A policy that hunts back with excellent manners and terrible appetite. This is what the galaxy deserves. Not safety, but a symbol that knows which things to cut first and how to keep the roof from falling while the fire goes where it should. Somewhere a child makes the sign correctly on the first try and grins. Somewhere a demon learns a new word for no. Somewhere a high lord writes another clause and puts down the pen with a sigh that admits history only ever gives you ugly choices and hopes you get the pretty endings anyway. Frieza's finger flicks. Light,